and welcome to episode number 2 of Commentators Corner. This is the second week of our podcast. I'm Tyler Rowdy. That's Brendan Preisman to my left. Last week was great. Whether you're joining us for the first time this week or you're coming over from last week as well, we thank you for being here, spending some time with us to talk some prep sports today. And we've got a lot to talk about. Tennis, cross country, and football have all already played at least one competition so far. And then at the end of this, we will talk with Mrs. Sara Smith, the Director of Student Activities, about the watch party that Student Council held last week for the Westside game. So a lot to talk about, a lot to be excited about, right?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, football didn't quite get what they wanted for the Westside game, but tennis and cross country both performed pretty well over the weekend.
Yeah, there were some highs and lows both for sure. Tennis and cross country, as you said, did well. Tennis was able to win their duel against Miller North on Thursday, and then they placed second in their multi-team competition on Saturday. And then cross country in the Saturday meet at the Westside Invitational, they won the varsity race and placed second in the JV race. So a good weekend for those sports, but football, which is the primary thing that we are here to talk about, not so much.
No. The JV won, but that was basically it.
Yeah, 42-0 loss to Westside for varsity. They started the game off well. It was scoreless through the first quarter. I mean, they did fumble on the first play, Prep did, but then a goal line stand by the defense. And the offense looked good for a while, but Prep was unable to capitalize on some Westside mistakes. There was a dropped interception towards the end of the first quarter. And then as soon as we turned the page from the first to the second, Westside took off. They scored 28 in that second quarter, and that led them to a 42-0 shutout victory. So a lot went wrong, but it was clear to see that Westside was the better team. I mean, their strength and their speed was just too much.
Yeah, it was incredible, and it was almost like a switch had been flipped and there was just a different team wearing those uniforms, because in the first quarter, Cole Payton and Avante Dickerson were both playing well below average for how they normally play. And then first play of the second quarter, how about a 65-yard touchdown? And then the defense just started making plays all over the field. There were so many times that Prep was facing a 3rd and 10 or a 3rd and 15 in the second quarter. It was incredible. And the offense just couldn't be stopped. There was a while where they were on pace for 42 in the quarter, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, Westside, once they got going, they just couldn't be stopped. Cole Payton had a passing touchdown, rushing touchdown, and a receiving touchdown, the quarterback for Westside. But the story of this game, really, it wasn't as much of kind of a 1 or 2 man show for Westside like it usually is with Payton and Dickerson. All around, they were really good because they had, I think, 3 separate players have long rushing touchdowns and then a pick 6 in the fourth quarter to put the exclamation point on it. So all around, just a great game for Westside and a very rough night for Prep. Their 4th consecutive loss to the Warriors.
3rd straight game where Westside has scored 28 in a quarter against Prep. And I believe all 3 of those games, the 28, have been unanswered, at least in the quarter. And you mentioned all the long rushing touchdowns. A lot of credit goes to Cole Payton. He's definitely the player of the game, but we saw him getting out there and making blocks on the running plays. He definitely spent some time in the weight room this summer, and it's showing. He's gone from a guy who you think of as just, the quarterback, you can throw it deep, and if he's got wide open field, then he might be able to break a long run. But this year, he was bowling people over.
Yeah, it looked like he was playing a video game, just controlling himself. I mean, he was making people miss. He was breaking just about every tackle that he encountered. Now, staying with the quarterback position, one thing I wanted to ask you about, going into that game, the plan for Creighton Prep at the QB position was to have Sam Meisenberg start at quarterback, and then the transfer from Elkhorn South, sophomore quarterback Parker Lisey, come into the second quarter. And that's how it went down. But in that first quarter that Meisenberg started, I thought he looked really good. He made a lot of
Mm-hmm.
great throws, especially on that second drive when Prep was able to get it to the edge of field goal range. And he looked really comfortable, I thought, for his
Yeah,
first
for
start.
sure.
Do you think it was too early of a poll to
I
pick one?
do. I think especially when you consider that this is going to be Meisenberg's fourth year with the football program, and Lizzie is still getting acclimated to what this program does, what this program's used to. I think that it was too early of a poll. Obviously, the quarterback can only work with what the defense lets him work with, and 0 points isn't like a spectacular score by any stretch of the imagination.
Mm-hmm.
But he was moving the ball when he had to. There were a couple sacks, sometimes when he probably should have thrown the ball away. But other than that, I thought he performed pretty well in the first start of his career.
Yeah, he made some great throws. There was one throw on the run to the sideline to Alex Bullock for about 30 yards for a first down. He made a couple
Mm-hmm.
other third down throws, some resisted pressure throws. I thought he looked great, but we'll
Yeah.
see how the quarterback position
Mm-hmm.
shapes up, as there should be a lot more offensive opportunities playing Papio, a less talented defense, but still a
Mm-hmm.
good one this week.
And last year could be a model for Prep, because last year Prep had two guys that could have started, John Caniglio, who was the better passer, and Braden Woodward, who was the better runner. And the coaches used that to their advantage by bringing in whichever quarterback suited the situation. If it's a third down on the 1 or it's a 4th and inches, then in comes Woodward. If it's like a third down and 12, here comes Caniglio. And that works quite well for the offense. So maybe the coaches are just trying to find the balance between Meisenberg and Lizzie.
Yeah. Well, the thing you got to start with is just getting points on the board, because I've had 0 to start the season. But looking ahead to this week's game, Friday night, September 4th at 7 p.m., Creighton Prep taking on 1-0 Papillion La Vista. They were able to beat their rivals, Papillion La Vista South, last week by a score of 40-11. So both sides of the football, offense and defense, were great. The defense was able to force 3 interceptions and sack the quarterback 5 times. So they're not as talented as Westside, but it's still a tough matchup for Prep.
Yeah, they moved up into the Class A top 10 after that win as well. They should have. That's the first time they've beaten the Titans since 2017. That's the first win in that rivalry game that the seniors got, which obviously makes it huge. And what stands out to me is just how dominant they were after the first quarter. They were down 11-7 at the end of the first quarter, and then they didn't actually take the lead again until there were about 4 minutes to go in the half. But then the second half was just all Monarchs. They also ended the game with a pick six, that one from their defensive back, Justin Wallace. And a 40-11 win for a team that not a lot of people really thought would be that good this year. That's quite impressive. I think they've got a lot of talent on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, especially that defense. That defense was really good. Another thing I saw from the stats of that game, the Monarch defense didn't allow any Titan rusher or receiver to exceed 40 yards in rushing or receiving. So yeah, they were able to bottle everything up. We'll see what they can do against Prep's offense, which still has plenty of talent, with A.J. Rollins, who was really quiet, I thought, in that West Side game.
Yeah.
Then Alex Bullock, and obviously we'll see how the quarterback position turns out. But what is the biggest key to you for Prep to turn the ship around and win this game before playing defending state champion Bellevue West next week?
You mentioned the offensive fireworks. I don't even think they need offensive fireworks, just offensive consistency. There were a lot of times when they would get a first down, maybe 2, and then all of a sudden there's a sack or there's a bad throw or a bad run or a penalty. And all of a sudden Prep's facing 3rd and 15 and either has to pull out the halfback draw or the rollout pass, which don't work very well against a defense as talented as Westside's. So they just get stuck in the mud on every drive. It was only a matter of when. So if they can just stay ahead of schedule, avoid the penalties, avoid the mistakes, then I think they're going to have a much better time of it than they did against Westside.
Yep, we'll see what happens. Make sure you head over to the watch party. Student Council's holding another one of those Friday night, Sullivan Center Commons at 6:45 p.m. That's when the doors open. game starts at 7, and the watch party is actually the subject of our special guest today. Joining us in a few moments here is Mrs. Smith, the Director of Student Activities and organizer of these watch parties. Mrs. Smith, thank you for joining us. First of all, I know you're very busy these days to start the school year as Director of Student Activities. How are you?
You know, it's going very well. I have to give a shout out, and everybody misses him, but DK, Dan Kennedy, he left me in a really, really good situation. Everything is very organized. There's so many more groups, so many more clubs, so much more stuff. And he left me with a ton of information on what he did for the past 3 years. So other than just kind of adapting and figuring out, kind of where everything is, it's been really fun. So it's been a great couple weeks so far.
Yeah, and it's been busy too, coming up with this new idea of doing a watch party for the West Side game.
Right.
I'm sure you continue on doing that for the rest of the football games, but how would you evaluate the success of it in terms of student energy and obedience to COVID-19 guidelines?
Right. So the weird thing about all of this COVID adjustment, whether it's teaching in the classroom or even planning activities outside of the classroom, is that you think you've covered every last detail, and then it comes to the day of the class or the event and you think, oh my gosh, I didn't think that's true. Like, there's so many more logistics and planning details that come up. And the bottom line is you just want to keep everybody safe. And so that has to be a combination of mask wearing most of the time, unless you're eating or drinking, and then the social distancing. And then the other thing that's a piece that the administration reflects on more is just, if someone, God forbid, is diagnosed, then can we kind of contact trace and kind of walk back and say, okay, who may have all been exposed? So some of that goes around in the background. And I don't think students really realize, that's why we have assigned seating at lunch, and that's why we have assigned seating in the classroom. It's a little bit harder from the watch parties perspective because we let students kind of move around freely. Yeah. So I think we might try to not necessarily lock it down for the next one, but just try to have more of a general idea of where everybody is, just from a contact tracing perspective. But by and large, students were good. The one thing that's the biggest challenge, in my opinion, is the social distancing. Like, that's not nobody has that natural intention to stay 6 feet apart from somebody. Like, if you're going to have a conversation with someone, you want to just kind of walk up to them, right? And so that's probably the biggest challenge, I think.
Yeah, so obviously last year, you being involved heavily with student council, spirit committee, all of that, you got to see firsthand just how impactful the Birdcage was for some of those football and basketball games. Last year was really the year of the comeback, many of those sparked by the Birdcage. So what did it mean to you to see the students all united in support for prep sports again?
It was so long overdue. And it's weird because there's so many traditions that guys keep going from year to year with the Cage, whether it's certain chants or like the storytelling at halftime or, any of those things. And it's just a huge reminder that we kind of take a lot of that for granted. And like last year during football season, and then again during basketball season, it was such a great and successful and high energy Birdcage all the way through, that then when we didn't have it for soccer season, and then it just was gone for a long time, to actually have everybody back together, albeit in a really different way, just to hear the chants again and to see the guys paint up and to see people pounding on the, the lunchroom tables. And just that was so, so fun to see. So it was really awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. What was the planning process like for it? Obviously, there was a lot that went into having a socially distanced watch party. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Right. Well, and I think a lot of it is because honestly, I was getting like some phone calls from other schools that were asking, like, how are you guys going to pull this off? Because we had kind of advertised on social media. And so people obviously knew about it. And I think two things that are really, really cool is, first and foremost, we just have an amazing facility at Prep. Other schools don't have a huge commons, and now we have the upper and lower Lannon. So we have a lot of space to spread out, and not a lot of other schools have that. So that is definitely in our favor. And then the other thing is just all of the planning that all of the administrators did over the summer. To have the plexiglass on all the lunch tables, and to have all the lunch tables numbered, and to have all the tables, so everybody knows exactly what seat there were. So it's really, it was kind of like set up for us. So all we had to come in was just kind of think through some details and execute. So, and then of course, the fact that so many students signed up and came was awesome. So we're hoping the turnout will be just as good for this Friday.
Yeah, so last week you had halftime entertainment such as the Blazing Hot Wings Challenge, where students would compete eating hot wings to try and match the intensity that was going on with the rivalry on the football field.
Right.
And there was quarter entertainment like putt. So can we expect similar events to that going forward, or are there going to be some?
Yes. No, so we're, I'm leaving that up to kind of the student council spirit execs that we have this year. And then since I am kind of taking over for Mr. Kennedy, we needed someone to kind of oversee the Birdcage and Spirit guys. And so Mr. Eastmo thankfully stepped up for that. So he's got a good handle on what those guys are planning. And yeah, there will be definitely some developments over the course of the season. They've got really kind of some cool ideas with some tech and some apps. I don't want to, say too much about what they've got going on, but there's going to be some fun stuff coming up, which is really cool.
Yeah. So if students didn't attend last week, how can they get into this upcoming one?
Right. So that's another thing that we kind of are developing at school. We put in 2 more of those TVs that have all of the notifications and everything. So what we're kind of trying to do, the QR codes seem to be working really well. So you can just RSVP with the QR code, and then you're in. And again, normally, like if it's a Birdcage at a football game, we don't need to, sorry, there's birds in my neighborhood. Anyway, but normally we don't have to limit the Birdcage, but because of social distancing and all that kind of stuff, we do, unfortunately. So we're capping around 300. So the QR code I'm going to post, it's already out on social media, and I believe it's already on the TVs in the building. So just scan it. It takes you to a Google form. Just a quick reminder, some guys, you got to be logged into your Creighton Prep email in order to get into the form to RSVP.
All right. Well, thank you, Mrs. Smith. I got to tell you, you inherited this situation as director of student activities, kind of similar to a relief pitcher coming in with the bases loaded and nobody out. And
Seriously.
I think you've knocked it out of the park.
Well, I know, but DK set me up. He so did, right? Yeah. So maybe one of these days for halftime entertainment, we should FaceTime with DK at halftime and have his face on the drop-down screens.
Yeah.
What do you think about that one? Wouldn't that be heavenly? That would be awesome.
Bring that down for sure.
Yeah, so maybe we'll work on that. Maybe you guys can help me with getting him piped in for that. So that'd be fun.
All right. Well, thank you, Mrs. Smith. Stay safe and
yes,
keep putting in the hard work because the students are loving it.
Thank you. And everybody come out. Tell everybody in school, follow us, Student Council. We have both a Twitter account and we also have an Instagram. So that's where you'll find out about a lot of stuff that's going on too. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Sara Smith, Director of Student Activities. We thank her, of course, for all of her hard work and for joining us as well. I'll be at that watch party on Friday night. Have fun again.
Yep. Upcoming schedule for the podcast for our viewers in case they're interested. This weekend, big one, probably going to be our longest episode yet, the NFL preview.
Yeah.
And then week, our plan is during the week we'll record and put out the recap of the Papio game, however that goes, and then a preview of the Bell West game, which will be coming up, as Tyler said, next Thursday. We'll be on that game. There will also likely be a watch party for that one as well. And then next weekend, college football preview. We're still not sure entirely how that season's going to go, whether the Big Ten's going to play at Thanksgiving or now or whatever, but we'll preview what we know is going to happen. And then we'll also include during those big football previews some updates on the other sports, baseball, in full swing, the Padres looking like a very talented team. The hockey playoffs winding up. The Tampa Bay Lightning also look really good. I saw that they beat the Bruins a couple days ago. And then, of course, the NBA playoffs, the second round is starting this week, so we'll make sure to provide updates on those as well. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, we've got a lot to cover over the next couple of weeks. So stay with us if you're enjoying it. We got you covered. Don't you
Yeah,
worry. Yep. All right. So thanks for checking out episode number 2. Thanks to Mrs. Sara Smith for joining us again. And we will see you this weekend.